Welcome everyone to week 2. Looking forward to getting straight into it, and today we're going to be looking at the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Listen, if you've done psychology, chances are you've touched on it. If you've done marketing, you might have looked at it, and if you're applying for a job, chances are you might have done one. It's one of the most well-known personality tests in the world. It's a psychometric questionnaire. So what does that mean? Essentially, it's a list of questions about yourself, and you start ticking a box between 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And it's about on how you make decisions, the sort of personality that you are. So it was created by Catherine Briggs and her daughter Isabella Meyer-Briggs. They published it in 1962, but first started around World War II. It was based on the work of Carl Jung, and essentially Carl was a very, very academic sort of guy. And so what Catherine and Isabella did was that they took that academic side and brought it into a more practical side for people to start to understand their own personality. So there's 4 dimensions that we're going to be looking at here. First of all, introversion and extroversion. You've heard of these before. I want you to stop and think for a second. What do you think of when I say extroversion? Chances are you're thinking loud, center of attention, and introversion, quiet as a mouse. Listen, that might be typical in most situations, but when we talk about introversion and extroversion, that's not what we're talking about. It's about where you draw your energy from. So if you're an extrovert, you draw your energy from being around people. So you do your best in group situations. When you're feeling down and out and tired, chances are you want to be around people to perk you back up. Extroverts need that real positive reinforcement. They need to be seen, they need to be heard, they need to be acknowledged. They need to have that interaction and contact with people, and that's how they draw their energy, that's how they do their best work. Introverts are on the other end of that scale. An introvert, it's not about being quiet, it's about where you draw your energy from. So introverts are at the end of a big day, or if they've got a big presentation coming up and they need to get the energy to be able to do it, they don't get around people. They go into a corner, they listen to some music, maybe jump on Facebook, and they're by themselves to recharge the batteries. So if you're an introvert, just think of those sort of times where you go to your room, you plug into Facebook, chuck the music on, and you're right and ready to go in about half an hour. That's essentially where the introvert and extrovert differences lie. Now, I want to give an example here of how this changes in a group dynamic. So think about yourself in the group dynamic, whether it's at work, whether it's at groups in university, and you've got your extroverts and you've got your introverts. Extroverts usually come up with ideas very, very quickly. Sometimes they'll be half-baked, but they'll throw them out there all the time, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, and going through this idea, this idea, this idea, this idea, this idea. Introverts like to take their time. They like to think about the problem, think about the entire problem, start to understand what's good about their idea, what's bad about their idea, work it through in their head before presenting it to the group. So if you're in a group where you've only got a 2-hour session, like we do here at Managerial Communication, a lot of the times the introverts won't bring out their ideas because they're still formulating in their head and still trying to make it perfect. That's where, as the leader of the group, you need to sit there and go, okay, my extroverts are giving me lots of ideas this time round. I need to go have a chat to my introverts, maybe after class, maybe set up a Facebook group so they can put their ideas up there to make sure that they're having their say as well, because chances are the ideas that the introvert's going to come up with are going to be very, very creative and very, very innovative. The reason I say this is because you've got Emma Watson on the screen. What do you think she is? Well, she's an introvert. A lot of the actors, singers, performers, sports people that you see out there, a lot of them are introverts because doing that sort of career and having that sort of focus on internal performance and how you go really takes a good introvert to understand, have a good self-analysis, understand what they're about and understand what they're going to be doing. And it is, if you're training for a marathon, if you're training for footy or writing a hit song, you need that time to formulate ideas, and often you're doing it alone. The second area we're talking about here is sensing and intuition. I want you to do me a favour. Describe out loud what's in front of you right now. Not here on the screen, I mean around you in your room. So if you've gone and said, oh, there's a Apple Mac laptop in front of me, There's a doona which is pink and brown and yellow. That's a terrible colour doona, by the way. Or there's cupboards behind me with all my different clothes in it. Chances are you're probably a sensor because you're naming individual things and describing them. An intuitor would probably generally say bed, laptop, cupboards. Very, very general, very broad. So the difference between sensing and intuition is the sensors prefer to process the information in the form of knowledge facts, really going step by step by step by step, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. The intuiting types like the big picture explanations. They like freedom, they like creativity, they like to broadly define tasks. They like to move from the outside and move in, where sensors like to move outside step by step by step by step. So this often means when a sensor and intuitor are working together, they can come at the idea in two very different ways, and often it's not until they meet in the middle that they start to understand where each other was coming from. Thinkers and feelers. If you've done your assignment 1 tests so far, there is a question in there which asks about thinkers and feelers, which asks, if you're in the playground and someone's hurt themselves, do you go and tell someone, or do you sit there and look after the person? I think that really sums up the difference between thinker and feeler really well. It's about that sort of decisions based on logic and going, what's next, what's next, what's next, what do I need to do to achieve this task? Or based on feeling, what is it based on my values? What is it based on the people around me? How do I look after the people around me to make sure we achieve that task? Coming at it from two very different angles. The thinkers are very objective. They evaluate the criteria, very logical, and all the explanations are around how we do our task and how do we achieve our goal. Feelers come from it in a different angle. They look at it and how it affects others. So they're very much more focused on the people within the group. They're making sure there's a lot of group harmony and really looking forward the professional and personal development of individuals. So where this is an issue within organisations is if you've got very clear thinkers, often they'll forget the people around them. So this is the task, this is what we have to do, and a very tunnel vision towards it. Often that means that there's a lot of discontent amongst their employees because they're not being looked after. On the flip side, from a feeling point of view, if you're too focused on the employees and too focused on the people around you, often you can forget about the task at hand and what needs to be done. Therefore, it's good to have that good mix of both, or at least have people in your team that are hitting both angles. Judges and perceivers. Open up your diary for me. Now, the judges amongst you will have very clear tasks. You'll be doing A, B, C, and D, this at this time, this at this time, meeting Sally at the gym at 4 p.m. Perceivers, chances are your diary is going to be fairly empty, that you like having flexibility in time and tasks. You don't like to be categorized into this is what I'm going to do this hour, this is what I'm going to do this hour. Also means with your essay plans, judges, you like to have a very clear essay plan, where perceivers, you like to go with the flow, write it, see how it happens. So really it's about judgment, structured way, making decisions, knowing where you stand, where the perceivers is much more flexible and going with the flow. Think about this in an organisational standpoint. Imagine putting a really strong judger with a really strong perceiver. Can you imagine how much a judge is going to be annoyed at a perceiver if they're going with the flow? It's all going to be okay. Timelines, meh, I'll get it done. The other thing is when you're putting together a project plan, a judger is really good at saying task A, task B, task C, task D, task E, and are able to come up with more tasks than you can possibly imagine. From a perceiver point of view, they will have a lot of trouble with project plans because they don't break down everything into those small little tasks. They see them as more big tasks and attack them from there. So they're the sort of 4 main areas of the Myers-Briggs type indicator that we'll be talking about. So how does the MBTI apply to organisations today? The big one is that when you walk in a room, you can start reading people. So the goal of understanding personality types is being able to work in a group and pick up on people's personalities very quickly, so you can start tailoring your leadership style and your communication style specifically to that person. It helps understand ourselves and the sort of behaviours we do. It helps us appreciate others and their individual traits and the things that they bring to the group. Helps with our personal development, and it's really good as a problem-solving tool and being able to bring in people who see things a little bit differently than yourselves. So there's a couple of assumptions here with the MBTI. The assumptions are opposite types cannot get along, and individuals are locked or labelled in their particular box. So if you're an extrovert, and that's how you're meant to act. Do you agree with this? I don't agree either. Well, that's what I was hoping you were going to say. Really, with any sort of personality type, it can change based on the day, based on the time, based on your mood. Opposite types definitely get along. Introverts and extroverts get along. Thinkers and feelers get along. Yes, there might be some clashes, but for a really productive team, you need people from all points of view to be able to be the most innovative, the most creative, and perform at that high level.